friends, Crystal here from Homemaking on the Homestead, and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be continuing on my series of important homemaking skills. Skills that I think are valuable for every homemaker to have, and a lot of them aren't really taught nowadays. And this is part number 3, and we're going to be talking about the frugal homemaker and finances and the value that she can have, a frugal homemaker can have in the home. One of the first scripture verses that comes to my mind when I think of the frugal homemaker is Proverbs 31:11. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. It means that he knows that the decisions that she makes and the things that she does are going to be a benefit to him and their family. I think today a lot of people don't necessarily think about being frugal. We tend to live in this throwaway society. If it's broke, you just toss it. If you need something, you just go out and buy it and replace something. And so the whole concept of being frugal isn't as popular as it once was, say, in my grandmother's day. She lived through the Depression, World War II. I remember as a child, she would have coffee cans full of rubber bands and little things that she would just save, because at one time those things were very valuable, and she learned how to make do and use a lot of the smallest little things. When we get into financial issues or difficulties in our life, we oftentimes think that the solution to the problem is more money. And I'm not going to say that that isn't entirely true, but oftentimes what we can do as homemakers is right there in front of us. I like to think of the household budget as a bucket filled with water. And this bucket has holes in it. Some are just pinholes, some are bigger. Each hole represents expenses, and the water represents the amount of money that we have to work with each month. As the water drains out of those holes, we have less money to work with. What easily happens is that we spend money, we spend a little here, we spend a little there. Each of these creates a little pinhole in the bucket, and it slowly starts to drain out. Have you ever had a leaky faucet? It just drips, 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 ever so slowly. You don't really pay attention to it. But over time, all those drips add up. And at the end of the day, the week, the month, you literally could have wasted gallons of water that just went down the drain. And you didn't even realize it. The things we spend money on can be the same way. Something that we don't see as a big expense on its own may actually be multiplied and be huge. I've known of people that have had a $5 a day coffee habit. At the end of the month, that's $150 that was spent just on coffee. And coffee can be made for pennies right at home. The first lesson that I learned on being frugal was to examine all my expenses, see where I am spending my money, and see what pinholes that I can start plugging up in that bucket. Ben Franklin is given credit for the saying, "A penny saved is a penny earned." However, I think historically that wasn't exactly what he said, but a few years later in his almanac it was changed to what we know now. But that is the basic concept of being frugal while you're at home and cutting expenses and seeing what you can do for the budget. All the little things that we do each day can add up to saving gallons of water. The home is literally filled with ways to be frugal and to save money. I remember when my husband had finished aircraft maintenance school and had gotten his job, and we had debt left from that. And at that point, we were making more money than we had at any point prior to that, which isn't to say it was a lot. He was at the bottom of the pay scale, and we had been living on a very meager budget prior to that as it was. And for some reason, despite making more money, we just literally could not get ahead. We couldn't get the debt paid off. We could just kind of maintain minimum payments. So one New Year's Eve, we sat down because our goal for the next year was we were going to pay off our debt. That was really important to us. We wanted to buy a house, and so we needed to pay off that debt. So we wrote down on a piece of paper all of our fixed expenses. of that year. We had our rent and our food and our utilities and gas, and we wrote all that down. Then we added in the things that we felt like we had spent money on, whether it was clothing or entertainment, going out to eat, and we were generous and said, okay, you know, I could see we could have spent this much in that area. And when we added all that up and compared it to how much money he had brought in that year, we had quite a bit of money that was unaccounted for. Where did it go? Where did all that money go? We had literally no idea, because those are the tiny little drips that come out of that bucket, those tiny little pinholes that we don't think about, because sometimes things are like a one-time expense, and so we buy something maybe impulsively, but at the end of the year all of those things begin to add up. That's when I started to become more conscientious about how I was spending my money and what I was spending my money on, and I started to re-examine everything that I had in my home and ask myself, do I really need these things? And those are the little tiny pinholes that I began to discover and begin to plug up. I looked at things like dryer sheets. You know, they're nice and all, but did I really need them? I mean, it's a small thing. They're not that expensive, but I decided, you know what, I think I can do without this, and I stopped buying it. I stopped buying paper towels. I just had some dishcloths, and I would use those, wash them, and reuse them again. All of these tiny things will add up. I found some discount fabric at a fabric store, and I made cloth napkins so I didn't have to buy paper napkins anymore. I started turning the heat down. Was 65 acceptable as opposed to 68 or 70? Did we really need to be that warm, or could we throw on an extra sweater or put the shoes and socks on during the day? Turn it down even more at night, put an extra blanket on the bed. All of those things were things that I could do, and they were saving money. They were plugging those pinholes. I continued to learn to cook from scratch, which I explained in my cooking video, which if you haven't seen my cooking from scratch, that was the second video in this series, and I can link that over here. I used to do things like, I called it freezer soup. I would keep a coffee can in the freezer, and if I had leftover veggies and leftover potatoes or pasta, beans, anything like that from meals that I had cooked during the week, but they weren't enough to necessarily use again the next night, I would just fill up the coffee can. I usually kept the meat separate so I could choose what to add at the end, but when that coffee can was full, I would pull it out and I would turn that into soup for us. I would save my vegetable peels and end pieces that you normally would just cut off, and if I had any sad looking vegetables in the refrigerator that looked like they were about at the end, I would save all those and put them in the freezer. When I had a big enough stockpile of them, I would put them in a pot, add water and salt, and I would make vegetable broth that I could use in my soups. Since these vegetable pieces would have gone in the garbage anyway, I was actually making vegetable stock for free. Cloth diapers was another area that I used to save money. Cloth diapers today have gotten very fancy and very expensive, but in my day when I had babies, they were not. It was not that way. I would buy a couple dozen new cloth diapers with each baby, with each pregnancy. I had rubber pants, I had diaper pins, and I washed my diapers a couple times a week. I cannot tell you how much money that saved. We never had cable, we never had magazine subscriptions. The library was my best friend. We got books and VHS tapes. Anybody else out there remember VHS players? Or am I definitely dating myself? But we got all those things for free. I would record television shows like Sesame Street and children's movies when they would come on TV onto VHS tapes so my kids could just watch them over and over again. We didn't have date night. We would put the kids to bed early, we would make a nice dinner, eat it by candlelight, maybe watch a movie that we enjoyed, and that was our date, and we enjoyed those. In fact, we have a lot of sweet memories on those date nights. We really enjoyed doing that and saving the money in the process. When I did spend money, I would look for the best deals I could possibly find. Like Proverbs 31:14 says, she is like the merchant ships, she brings her food from afar. She searches and she works to find those deals. She makes conscious choices of how she spends her money and where she spends her money, doing all for the benefit of her household. All these frugal choices add up over time. As each pinhole was plugged and money was not spent without thought, we eventually were able to pay off our debt, and we were able to save up for our first house, which was a fixer-upper. And it was another frugal choice that we made. I like to look at being frugal as a challenge. How many meals can I stretch this one chicken into? How many leftovers in my refrigerator can I repurpose into a brand new meal so they don't get thrown away? How many things in my home can I reuse? Can I fix? Can I repurpose? So that I don't have to spend money in areas that aren't necessary. I believe the wise knowledge of a frugal homemaker helps in so many ways. Her husband trusts her choices. The family benefits from money being spent wisely, and a satisfaction of knowing that you are being the best possible steward with the resources that God has provided you with. If you have frugal tips and ideas that you have found helpful over the years, I would love to hear them in the comments. I would love for them to be there for other women that come and to get ideas and to glean information from, so that they can also find new ways to be the best possible stewards of their resources. All right, you guys, I appreciate you being here for this third part of this series. And if you liked it, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel and you like my content, would you consider subscribing? I really appreciate that as well. All right, everybody. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.